I hadn't heard my mother's voice in 3 years, but when I opened the envelope and saw the wedding invitation inside, I could hear her in my head like she'd never left. White cardstock, gold lettering, embossed edges. It was all exactly her, expensive and stiff. The name at the center stopped me cold. Hannah Marie Whitmore. My little sister. There was no return address, no note, not even a hope you can make it. Just a date, a location, and a reminder that I was no longer part of the family. They never meant to send it. That was obvious. My name, Leah Whitmore, was typed under guest, but it had the feel of an administrative mistake. A technicality. The kind of thing someone lets slide because they assume you won't come anyway. But I kept staring at it. The last time I stood in that house, I was 17, holding a backpack and a burning throat. My mother had just finished yelling. My dad didn't even look at me. Hannah had been crying, but not for me. I left and never came back. Now, 7 years later, they were getting together like none of it ever happened. Fancy dresses, champagne toasts, perfect portraits with the whole family, except for the piece they cut out long ago. They didn't think I'd show. That was their first mistake. The bus ride home was quieter than I expected. I kept my headphones in but wasn't listening to anything. Just watching trees blur past the windows while the ache in my stomach spread like fog. It had been years since I saw the town. The same grocery store still stood near the old overpass. The same diner with the flickering open 24 hours sign. It felt like I was peeling back a layer of myself I'd buried, and the past was still clinging to the bones. The driver called my stop. I stood, stiff-legged, and stepped off into the cold wind of May. The kind that cuts through your coat even when the sun's out. A silver Mercedes was already waiting. Of course it was. The window rolled down and my mother looked at me like she was reading an x-ray. No smile. Just a quick scan for damage. You came, she said, as if that was an inconvenience. I did. She didn't move to hug me. Hannah doesn't need any stress this week. I looked her in the eye. Neither do I. The house hadn't changed. Still manicured to death. Still cold. The front porch looked like it belonged in a magazine, not a family. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and judgment. I stepped through the door and immediately felt 16 again. Small, wrong, and being watched. Leah. A voice called from upstairs. I looked up just in time to see Hannah at the top of the stairs. She was still in pajamas, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked older than I remembered, but softer, somehow. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. You really came. I nodded, unsure if she meant it as a good thing or not. She ran down the stairs and hugged me. It was tight, but shaky, like she didn't know how to hold me, or maybe how to let go. I've missed you, she whispered. I didn't say anything. She pulled back. Come on, I'll show you your room. My room. Like I still had one here. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the suitcase I hadn't unpacked. Dinner had been a performance. My mother setting plates with robotic precision. My father quietly sipping wine. Hannah talking fast to fill the silence. No one mentioned the years between. No one asked what I'd been doing. It was like I'd never left and like I'd never really existed. And through it all, my mother watched me the way a surgeon watches a tumor. At one point, she reached across the table, picked a piece of lint off Hannah's sleeve, and said, "We need to schedule your final fitting tomorrow. And your hair. No roots in the pictures." She glanced at me without turning her head. As if on cue, Hannah dropped her fork. It clattered loud against her plate. She looked at me with panic. "Leah," my mother said suddenly, "you won't need to be in any of the formal portraits. You understand, right? You'll be there, of course, but not, in the photos." There it was. I felt the words like a slap. Clean, sharp, and meant to leave a mark. "No," I said quietly. My father cleared his throat, pretending to be interested in the bread basket. My mother's voice dropped to a silk-covered threat. "Don't even think about coming to the wedding if you plan to make a scene." Then, with a smile that could freeze boiling water, "You'll ruin the pictures." I left the table without saying another word. My hands were shaking. Upstairs, I locked the door behind me, not because I was afraid of anyone coming in, but because it felt like the only control I had left. I sat on the bed again. Still didn't unpack. From down the hall, I heard Hannah knock once. "Leah." Her voice was soft. "I'm sorry. I didn't know she'd say that." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't believe her, but because deep down, I suspected she'd known. And that's what hurt. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen watching my mother peel an orange with a paring knife like it had personally wronged her. Each slice came off clean. No mess. No waste. That was her way. Even her breakfast was meticulous. She didn't acknowledge me when I walked in. Just kept slicing. "I can make my own coffee," I offered. "You don't know where anything is," she said without looking up. "Guess I forgot." "No," she said. Placing each orange slice in a glass dish, you left. I didn't bother answering that. Hannah wandered in a few minutes later, tying her robe. She glanced between us like she'd walked into a minefield. Morning. Morning, I said. My mother smiled at her. You have your final fitting at noon. Don't be late. Leah, you're not needed for that, obviously. Hannah's eyes flicked toward me. I just nodded. Obviously. After breakfast, I stepped outside to clear my head. The backyard still had the same white trellis and the same iron bench I used to hide under when I wanted to disappear. I sat on it now, legs stiff, watching a squirrel try to climb the bird feeder pole and fail. You're really not going to be in the photos? I turned. Hannah had followed me outside, arms crossed, eyes tired. She made that clear, I said. She didn't mean it like that. No, Hannah. She meant it exactly like that. She bit her lip, like she was holding back 10 different apologies and none of them were enough. I didn't know she'd say that to you. You didn't stop her either. That landed hard. She sat down next to me, quiet for a second. It's not easy, okay? You know how she is. Yeah, I said. I know. We both stared at the grass for a while. Finally, she said, I don't want you to leave again. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I hadn't decided yet. Later that afternoon, I walked through the town square, mostly to remind myself the world hadn't shrunk to that house. The bookstore was still there, tucked between the florist and a new juice bar. I stepped inside and was hit with that warm paper and coffee smell that always felt like home. Leah. I turned and saw him. Daniel Harper. In high school, Daniel had been 2 years ahead of me. Quiet. Smart. The kind of kid teachers loved because he actually listened. He looked the same now, just older and a little more tired around the eyes. I didn't think you were still in town, I said. Didn't think you were either. He smiled, then added, everyone thought you vanished. I did. He didn't ask why. Didn't press. Just nodded like that made sense. You back for the wedding? I gave a tight laugh. Something like that. He looked at me for a long beat, then said, well, you look like someone who could use a strong cup of coffee. That was how I ended up at the little cafe across from the library, sitting at a corner table with someone who didn't ask me to explain myself. We talked about everything but the wedding. He told me about teaching history at the high school now. I told him I was managing a bookstore 3 towns over and pretending not to hate it. Why'd you really come back? Leah. I thought about lying. About saying I miss my sister. But the truth slipped out before I could stop it. I needed to know if I still belonged to something. Or if I was just fooling myself. Daniel nodded slowly. And what's the verdict? I stared out the window, watching Hannah walk across the square from her dress fitting, bouquet in hand, smile plastered on. Still out, I said. That night, my mother called a family meeting. Just the 5 of us. Her, Dad, Hannah, me, and Eleanor. My aunt had arrived while I was out. She sat in the living room in her usual tailor blazer, sipping tea like she owned the place. And Eleanor was the family's favorite mirror. She reflected back everything they wanted to believe about themselves. Leah, she said with a smile too sharp to be kind. You're looking well. I gave her a nod. You're looking familiar. My mother jumped in. We need to talk about the rehearsal dinner. Seating's been finalized, and Leah, we've placed you at the back table. Of course you have. My father cleared his throat. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. What's hard about it? I asked. You want me at the edge of the room, out of sight, not in the photos. Makes sense. That way you can tell everyone I'm off working abroad or fighting tigers or whatever story you told when I left. And Eleanor narrowed her eyes. It's a sensitive weekend, Leah. Let's not stir things up. I stood. You all stirred things up 7 years ago. I just showed up to see what was still floating. My mother's voice snapped like dry ice. If you're going to cause problems, leave now. We won't have drama overshadow Hannah's big day. I looked at Hannah. Her face was pale, her mouth open like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Don't worry, I said. I'll stay in the background. Wouldn't want to ruin the pictures. As I left the room, I heard Eleanor whisper something to my mother. Something about still unstable. I didn't turn around, but I smiled. Because that word? That meant they were still scared of the truth. And that meant I was finally getting... The next morning, I woke up before the house did. Couldn't sleep. I kept hearing my mother's voice in my head. Don't even think about coming to the wedding. You'll ruin the pictures. That line didn't just sting, it stuck. I slipped downstairs barefoot, the hardwood floor still creaking in the same spots it did when I was a kid sneaking past curfew. The living room was dim, quiet, except for the ticking of that antique grandfather clock she loved more than her children. In the hallway, I passed the photo wall. There were dozens of them. Family portraits from every major life event, graduations, holidays, baby showers. I paused in front of one from Hannah's Sweet 16. Everyone smiling, dressed to impress. But not me. Because I wasn't in it. I wasn't in any of them after age 17. At the bottom corner of one frame, I noticed a crease in the matting. I leaned closer. It wasn't a crease. It was a tear, clean, deliberate, like someone had cut out a piece. I stepped back. They didn't just forget me. They removed me. I went upstairs, this time with purpose. If they were hiding me in photos, what else had they buried? I opened the attic door and climbed up, careful not to disturb anything obvious. It still smelled like mothballs and forgotten holidays. Boxes stacked like bricks in a wall no one wanted to tear down. I found the old cedar chest in the back, the one my grandmother gave my mom years ago. Inside were photo albums, letters, and one small red notebook. I knew that notebook. It was mine. I flipped it open. My handwriting stared back at me. It wasn't a diary exactly, just a place I'd scribble thoughts when I felt like I couldn't say them out loud. And one entry hit me square in the chest. June 14th. I didn't tell anyone about what I saw in Dad's office. I don't even know what it was, exactly. But Mom got scared. And then she got angry. Told me if I mentioned it again, I'd regret it. I sat there frozen, the memory slipping back into place like a puzzle piece I hadn't known was missing. Dad. His office. The folder I wasn't supposed to touch. That was the week before everything changed. I remembered now. He'd been arguing with someone over the phone. I walked in, curious. Saw papers, a ledger, numbers that didn't make sense. He slammed the drawer shut so fast I nearly jumped out of my skin. Then Mom came in. Took one look at me. And everything shifted. 2 days later, they accused me of stealing money from her purse. $100. It was absurd. I didn't even have access to her room. But the story stuck. They said I was troubled. Acting out. Maybe even on drugs. I wasn't. But no one listened. The $100 was a distraction. A cover-up. I was punished, grounded, isolated, and then told to leave. My mother had called it a fresh start. She framed me to protect him. I sat in the attic for a long time, gripping the notebook, wondering if Hannah ever knew the truth. When I came back downstairs, Hannah was pacing the kitchen, phone in one hand, mascara wand in the other. She nearly jumped when she saw me. Hey, she said. You okay? I nodded, but I didn't mean it. Big day, she offered, trying to smile. Rehearsal dinner tonight. I told Mom not to seat you in the back. Thanks, I said. She hesitated. I've been meaning to ask you something. I waited. That day you left, did something happen? I mean, other than the whole, stealing thing. There was no stealing, Hannah. She bit her lip. I didn't think so. I never believed it. But they were so sure. They lied. Why? I hesitated. Because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. And instead of asking what it was, they decided I was the problem. She stared at me. Are you going to say anything? To who? To them. Everyone. You think they'd listen now? I don't know, she said. But maybe they'd have to. That evening, I got ready like I was walking into court, not a party. I wore a black dress, simple but clean, and tied my hair back. No makeup. No mask. If they were going to look at me, they'd see me, not the girl they tried to erase. The rehearsal dinner was at a vineyard just outside town. Candlelight, fairy lights, tables draped in linen. My mother had outdone herself, and she made sure everyone knew it. I walked in just as Hannah was giving a toast. She looked relieved to see me, but my mother stiffened like someone had just spilled red wine on her soul. I sat at my table, not in the back, thanks to Hannah, and kept my hands folded. I could feel eyes on me from every direction. People whispering, glancing, remembering stories they'd heard but never questioned. When dessert was served, Eleanor slid into the seat beside me. I always thought you'd grow out of this phase, she said, not even trying to hide the venom. But here you are, still so determined to make everything about you. I smiled at her. I didn't make this about me. You all did. When you decided silence was easier than truth. She sniffed. Don't play the victim. I'm not, I said. But maybe you should ask why your sister cut me out of the family photo album. Eleanor didn't respond. She stood and walked away, but not before muttering, you'll regret coming back. Maybe. But at least now, I knew why they wanted me gone. And that was more power than they ever expected. The next morning started with whispers. Not real ones, just that thick, suffocating silence that fills a house when people are talking about you behind closed doors. I could feel it in the walls, in the way the floorboards groaned like they were tired of keeping secrets. I went downstairs and found Hannah in the dining room, twisting a cloth napkin in her hands. Her eyes were red-rimmed. They told me not to let you come today, she said quietly. Who? Mom. Eleanor. Dad didn't say much, but you know how he is, quiet means agreement. I sat across from her. What did they say? That you're trying to ruin the wedding. That you're stirring up old drama to get attention. I let out a hollow laugh. They're the ones who erased me. I just showed up. I told them I wanted you there. Really there. In the pictures at the table, next to me when I get ready. All of it. I blinked. That was the closest thing to an "I need you" I'd heard in years. They didn't like that, she added. Said you'd bring shame. Said you'd embarrass us. They're not worried about embarrassment, I said. They're worried about exposure. She looked at me for a long time. Leah, what did you see back then? I hesitated, then reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the red notebook. Flipped to the page. Pushed it across the table. She read it slowly, as moving like she was scared each word might explode. The ledger? She asked. I nodded. I didn't understand it all, but I knew it wasn't right. Dad was hiding something. Her voice dropped. Money. Maybe. Maybe more. But whatever it was, Mom went into panic mode. And suddenly I was a thief, a liar, unstable. It worked. Everyone bought it. Including you. I didn't want to, she said. But I was 15. They told me you needed help, that you were making up stories. They needed a scapegoat. I was convenient. She swallowed hard. And now I think you're the only one who can help fix this. That afternoon, we snuck into Dad's office. It hadn't changed. Same leather chair, same glass paperweight with a crack no one ever talked about. The drawers were locked, but Hannah knew where the key was. Back of the bookshelf, taped behind an old encyclopedia. She handed it to me. Are you sure? Too late not to be. We opened the bottom drawer. Inside were several folders. Invoices. Account ledgers. One was labeled charity account. Disbursements 2015 to 2017. My stomach flipped. Look, I said, pointing to the numbers. That's the summer everything went sideways. Thousands of dollars funneled through fake donation entries. Money given to ghost charities. Checks written to names I didn't recognize. He was laundering money, Hannah whispered. And when I saw it, just saw it, Mom shut me down. Said if I opened my mouth again, I'd ruin the family. Did you tell anyone? No one who believed me. She stared at the papers, then at me. I do. It was the first time she'd ever said it. That night, Hannah stood in front of our parents and Eleanor and said she wanted to change the wedding program. I'm adding Leah as co-maid of honor, she said. And she'll be in the photos. Dead silence. My mother's hand clenched around her wine glass. That's not happening. It is, Hannah said. Unless you want a real scene on Saturday. Eleanor leaned forward. You're being manipulated, sweetie. She's feeding you lies. I saw the files, Hannah replied. Don't insult me. My father finally spoke, voice low and tired. What do you want, Leah? I want the truth, I said. I want you to admit what you did to me. I want my name cleared. That was years ago, he said. Let it go. I did. For 7 years. And you still made me the villain. You'll tear this family apart, Mom hissed. I stood. You did that already. I'm just holding up the mirror. I looked at Hannah. You sure about this? She nodded. They took a piece of our lives and tried to make us forget. We're taking it back. That night, I lay in bed wide awake. Not afraid. Not even angry anymore. Just ready. Tomorrow was the wedding. And for once, I wasn't going to be The morning of the wedding, the house was tense in that overpolished way, like everything was one broken teacup away from shattering. My mother moved like a general prepping for battle, barking orders, smoothing napkins, double-checking a seating chart she'd already memorized. She didn't say a word to me, not even when I walked into the kitchen and poured coffee into the good china mug she usually kept locked away for important guests. I didn't care. I'd stopped asking for permission years ago. Upstairs, Hannah sat in a silk robe while 2 stylists fussed with her hair. She looked stunning nervous, but stunning. When she saw me, she smiled like she hadn't smiled in days. You ready? I asked. No, she admitted. But I will be. You don't have to do anything, you know? Not if you're scared. She looked at me in the mirror. I've been scared my whole life. And look where that's gotten us. I squeezed her shoulder. Whatever happens, I've got your back. I know, she said. That's why I can do it. The ceremony was at the country club, of course it was. Big white gazebo, a string quartet, the smell of roses and money everywhere. Guests arrived in little waves, all smiles and polite air kisses. I watched them from the edge of the reception tent, sipping champagne I didn't ask for and definitely hadn't earned in their eyes. You clean up well, a voice said behind me. I turned. Daniel. Somehow, he always found me in the middle of the chaos. You came, I said, honestly surprised. He grinned. Someone had to make sure you didn't throw cake at anybody. I'm not ruling it out. You nervous? Less than I should be. He looked at me for a long moment. Proud of you, Leah. That meant more than I expected it to. Guests began taking their seats. Hannah stepped out in her dress, and people actually gasped. She was radiant, confident in a way that made her glow. My mother fussed over her veil, probably pretending nothing was wrong. still clinging to the fantasy of the perfect family photo. Too late. The ceremony began. I stood near the front, not in the bridal party, not in the family row, but close enough to see everything. The officiant started his speech, and for a moment, it was almost normal. Sweet. Controlled. Then Hannah cleared her throat. "Before we continue," she said, her voice shaking just enough to make every head turn, "I need to say something." My mother's face froze mid-smile. "I know today is supposed to be about love, about honesty and vows. So I want to start mine with the truth." My heart thudded. 7 years ago, my sister Leah was forced to leave this family. Not because she did something wrong, but because she saw something our parents wanted hidden. They told us she was troubled, that she made it all up. But she didn't. People shifted in their seats. She saw financial records, evidence of fraud. She confronted it, and they chose to silence her, to protect their reputation. I believed their lies because I was 15 and scared to ask questions. But now I know the truth, and I won't be silent anymore. My mother stood up, face pale. "Hannah, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," Hannah said. "Because if we don't tell the truth here, today, when we're making promises in front of the people we love, then what are we even doing?" She turned to me. "Leah, I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you before. But I'm standing up now. You belong here. You always did." The whole place was dead quiet. Even the violinists had stopped mid-note. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But all I felt was this fierce, quiet pride, like something inside me had finally been seen. My mother sat down hard. My father stared at the ground. The officiant cleared his throat and somehow managed to keep going. The ceremony continued, a little shaken, but real now. Honest in a way most weddings never are. Afterward, as the photographer called out for family portraits, I started to walk away, not wanting to push my luck. Hannah grabbed my hand. "You're in the pictures. Your mom." Let her pout. "It's my wedding." I stood beside her in the sun, the camera flashing as someone yelled, "Smile." And for the first time in over a decade, I didn't feel like a shadow on the edge of someone else's story. I was part of the frame, and I wasn't going in. The reception was in full swing by the time the sky turned gold. Hannah and her new husband were locked in some slow dance that made the entire room a little misty-eyed, and I sat off to the side, sipping sparkling water and wondering when the other shoe would drop. Because in my family, it always did. But for the first time in a long time, the quiet was comfortable. No one whispered when I walked by. No one avoided eye contact. The guests were still processing Hannah's truth bomb at the altar, sure, but no one had stormed out. No one screamed. No drama. Just a lot of polite disbelief and the occasional awkward hug. Daniel slid into the chair beside me and handed me a slice of cake. "Chocolate, of course." "Still standing," he said. "Barely." I half expected a food fight. I took a bite and smiled. "Mom's holding it together, but just barely. She hasn't looked me in the eye once." "She will," he said. "Eventually." I raised an eyebrow. "You're optimistic." "No," he said. "I'm just betting on you." He always had a way of saying things that made you believe them, even when you didn't want to. Later, I wandered out to the garden behind the venue. Lanterns swayed from tree branches, soft music played from hidden speakers, and the warm evening air smelled like jasmine and nostalgia. It reminded me of being 15 and sneaking out to breathe. Back when everything was tight and quiet and no one asked why I was so angry all the time. I didn't hear her coming until she was close. "Beautiful night," my mother said, stepping next to me. I didn't respond. She folded her hands neatly, like she was holding on to her dignity by the knuckles. "You embarrassed us." I let out a low laugh. "You erased me. I think we're even." "You think telling all those people was brave?" "It was childish." "No," I said calmly. "Leaving your teenage daughter to take the fall for something she didn't do? That was childish. Lying for years to protect a lie you were too proud to confront? That's not just childish, it's cruel." Her jaw clenched, but her voice stayed cool. "This could have been handled privately. You had your chance. 7 years of chances." She looked at me, really looked this time, and for a split second I thought maybe I'd see regret. But it wasn't that. It was fear, the kind that comes when control slips through your fingers. "I hope you're happy," she said flatly. "I'm free," I said. "I'll take that." She walked off after that, back into the fairy lights and the perfect smiles, her figure sharp against the soft glow like a cracked piece of porcelain. I didn't follow. I didn't watch her go. I just stood there, breathing. Later that night, Hannah found me and looped her arm through mine. "Everyone loved you," she said. "Even the ones who didn't know what to say." "I don't care if they did or didn't," I replied. "This wasn't about them." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad you came. I'm glad I stayed." At the end of the night, when the band played its final slow song, She dragged me to the dance floor. Daniel followed, grinning as he offered his hand. You know, he said as we swayed. For someone who was uninvited. Yeah, you kind of stole the show. I laughed. Guess I ruined the pictures after all. He leaned in. Nah, you made them worth looking at. And just like that, it hit me. Everything they tried to hide. All the times they told me to stay out of frame, to disappear, to not be seen. It didn't matter anymore. Because now, I was in the picture. And this time, no one was cutting me